Well, we've looked at international law on our other pod this week, so
We have,
I thought we'd go across to the more meat of what's happening in the Gulf at the moment and the objectives and the outcome of where we're going or where the Americans think they're going with this, because there's been a number of different suggestions during the week from different members of the US administration as to what they feel the objectives are. I don't know whether you'd heard what. I mean, Trump was inferring that it was regime change earlier in the week. We had Miss Levitt laying out 4 points last night, which didn't include regime change, but included a ballistic missile program, the nuclear program, the threat, I believe she said, to their neighbours and to Israel. And I can't, for the likes of me, I can't remember what the fourth one was.
Well, but they all come under the category of degrading offensive capability, don't they? So that's that. If we say that's that, you've got regime change. What else have we had?
Well, we're talking about the ballistic missile program, weren't we? In terms of, I mean, that's degrading their capability. I mean, let's look at regime change because from what I was hearing this morning, the numbers are that they, within the first day of this offensive war, they killed 49 of their top leaders, including the supreme leader. 49. Now, I don't know how many. There was a meeting taking place, wasn't there, in central Tehran? And the other bit that I was looking at this morning suggests that the Israelis, Mossad, have had this particular building under surveillance for months and months and months. Now, whether they've got, you speculate on these things, don't you? Whether they've got webcams in a hotel building or what have you across the road, just watching the comings and goings of who comes into this building and who doesn't.
Yeah, they've also got agents,
right?
So they'll have either native Iranians or other guys living in the country, imposters, if you like. So they'll have eyes on.
Okay. So if we take it, let's look at it from another perspective. Let's look at all these, take them as though they are the primary objective.
Yes.
And see how they might be successful or otherwise. So they've knocked out these 49 top leaders, including the supreme leader, and all the speculation is today that he's about to be replaced by his son.
Yes.
Who's also apparently more hard-line cleric than he was himself. So the objective here in knocking out the top leadership is, I would suggest, one is to put the fear of, it's not a job that you'd want at the moment, is it really?
Might be quite a short list, yeah.
Yeah, because the Israelis are already saying that whoever takes the role will not last long. They'll knock them out as well. So the objective might be to put the fear of God into these people, and presumably then they'll be looking at a regime change of some sort. Some suggestion that Trump was thinking or was hoping that it was going to be something along the lines of what happened in Venezuela, that they take out the top man, or in this case, the top 40. From below that level, you've got more apparatchiks who step up, who are more pliable and more willing to do a deal with the Israelis and the Americans. What do you think of that concept?
Well, I think you have to credit the Iranians with having some sort of succession thinking. And obviously they would have scenario planned, maybe not 47, but they would have scenario planned a goodly number of their leaders being killed. And that's exactly what's happened, isn't it? There's this sort of group of temporary leaders, and now they'll appoint the Ayatollah's son, as you say, probably. So that's the first thing to bear in mind, that they were always going to have a plan. The second thing is that militarily, they've got the Revolutionary Guard, haven't they? So-called Praetorian Guard around the next, I guess it'll be an Ayatollah, the next Ayatollah.
Yeah. I mean, I should step in to just say that he's the favourite. They haven't announced yet, but also he's the son of Khamenei, who's the previous supreme leader. But there's also the grandson.
Oh, is it? Sorry. I thought it was the how do you pronounce the one who's just been killed?
Khamenei. Yeah.
Yeah,
Khamenei,
that's what I said. Yeah.
Ayatollah Khamenei. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. You haven't said anything wrong, but also in the running, one of the candidates is the grandson of Khomeini, who was the original founder of the Islamic State, who flew back in from Paris. You remember in 1979.
So it's a dynasty, isn't it? Unelected as well.
Unelected. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just so foreign to us.
I,
For all the ills of our political system, that
I,
doesn't feel right. But anyway,
well, I guess they'd argue appointed by God, which is how we used to do things over here, wasn't it? Before we had a parliament,
yeah.
going back to monarchs and what have you. That was what our civil war was all about, wasn't it? But anyway, sorry,
Well,
I
we've moved on a
digress.
bit. We've moved on a bit since then. But anyway, so Revolutionary Guard. So the point is, if there's going to be an uprising, the military have got to get on side. Look what happened when those kids protested earlier last year. They were massacred.
Yeah, yeah.
And although there's still some very brave people who were celebrating a Supreme Leader's death, that's different from actually in some way marching through the streets and taking over power. But you can't, can you? So somehow you've got to get either the regular army or the Revolutionary Guard or both on side. And until that happens in this particular country where they are, I don't want to be rude by calling them fanatics, but I think they are religious fanatics, or a goodly proportion of a bit, because that's what they've known and that's what they believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Then until you get the military on side, I don't see it happening. And Starmer said in the House, or rather that Tory minister said, there is no history of regime change coming from air superiority, is there?
No. You're right. Starmer said that you can't get regime change from the air. Yeah.
Well, you can't. And then all of a sudden, Trump was suggesting that he hasn't ruled out boots on the ground. I will be amazed if that happens.
Yeah, I can't see that happening. And I agree with what you're saying in terms of the ICRG, I think it is, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They're so bound up, their lives and their wealth and their standards of living are so
as well.
bound up with the existing leadership that they're not going to turn. The normal army, I would suggest that they haven't got the munitions and the connections that maybe the ICRC. So I don't see that happening. And the other thing I would say, I think we're living, and this is only my view, but we're living in kind of cuckoo land if we try and believe this is what Putin was saying about Ukraine to a certain extent. At the moment he marched in, he thought that they were going to be welcomed as liberators by the Ukrainian people. And I get the same impression with the Iranian people. 99% of them want a Western-style democracy, and the other 1% are. It's almost like a 50-50 split, I would say, in Iran, that half the nation
possibly
are behind the current administration and are very religious, as you say, and have been brought up with strict orthodoxy with regard to Islam and what have you. And the other half are not. The other half are what I would say to be controversial. The other half are the Shah's people, who are people who want Iran to revert back to how it was before the revolution.
Yeah, but I think whichever half you're in, it must be tough living in a country where there's huge inflation, where you have to go without so much because of the sanctions.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, don't you, where are the oil revenues going? Who's taking that? So there are enough seeds in there for a revolution on the revolution, but that's the will.
Yeah.
But what about the wherewithal? Because unless you have military capability, or unless the leaders of the military come on your side, and then it's all over, it's so difficult. And as you say, if there's these vested interests in a goodly part of the Revolutionary Guard, it's not obviously going to happen without a lot of blood being shed.
So we ruled out a popular uprising effectively. We don't think that's going to happen.
I think it's difficult. Well, you never know, but I think it's difficult.
No, I think it's difficult. If that's unlikely, then some of the other suggestions coming out of the administration, there's even the suggestion that they may be able to arm the Kurds and the Kurds will march into. I mean, that sounds to me absurd. No disrespect to the Kurds, but they're not. A Kurdish administration in an Iranian in Tehran is just not. It's not a runner, is it? Really, at the end of the day. So, without boots on the ground, which is, I agree with what you're saying. I think he'd be very reluctant, Trump, to put any American boots on the ground. Where does you see this going?
Well, let's follow that through. So, if our hypothesis is there cannot or will not most probably be an uprising and we're not going to have boots on the ground, then I think what will happen, the other thing that we're just talking about Iran at the moment, but we're already seeing the impact on the world in, gas prices, as they would call it. In our own country, all the fixed tariffs have been withdrawn. If you're not in a fixed tariff, they're not available in terms of energy. That's going to be happening all over the place. So the other pressure will come domestically for Trump and from his allies saying, look, come on, you've got to stop this. We can't go on doing this. So perhaps the real objective, or how it will be packaged, is we've significantly degraded the capability of Iran. So they're not now a present threat. They were a threat because that's our legal basis for the war, but they're no longer. We did want the population of Iran to revolt. They haven't. That's a shame. But nevertheless, we still won because we've degraded their aggressive capability.
You think that's how it's going to be spun at the end of the day?
I think if you can clip this up and we can play this back in a month or two, I think that might actually happen, or I'll look a complete Charlie.
And ultimately, we end up with a more hardline regime in Tehran than we had in the first place.
Yes, so but in the meantime, significantly degraded in what they can do to us until the next time.
Obliterated
Twice. Can you obliterate?